Good morning. This is John from the Springs Mennonite Church. And I'm getting near the end of this week of just some random scriptures. I have one from Galatians today that, well, at least according to my markings in my Bible, I hadn't talked about before. It's not really a new idea, but it's a good one. So let's look at Galatians chapter 5 and verses 13 and 14. And here's what we find. Paul writes, "For you have been called to live in freedom, my brothers and sisters. But don't use your freedom to satisfy your sinful nature. Instead, use your freedom to serve one another in love. For the whole law can be summed up in this one command: love your neighbor as yourself." Now, the context of this is the New Testament church beginning. It evolved out of Old Testament Judaism. And Old Testament Judaism had lots and lots and lots of rules. Yep, some of them really specific. Just meander through Leviticus sometimes when you're good and awake and read some of them. And the Bible tells us that God gave those laws to demonstrate to people that you can't live by all those laws. Well, it's interesting how, even though that's true, and even though the early Christians celebrated in the freedom that Jesus brought, they still, after he died, had to figure out how do we live? How do we work this thing out? And one of the things that kept coming up were groups that wanted to have rules and rules and rules and rules. There's still those groups today. Now, I'm not saying that they're bad people. I'm just saying that I think they missed the point. Now, of course, they'll say to me, I missed the point, and I accept that. But that's not what Paul is saying here. He says, you've been called to live in freedom, meaning freedom from all the rules of the Old Testament. But that doesn't mean it's a freedom to do whatever you want. Here's how he says it. But don't use your freedom to satisfy your sinful nature. Being free to do as I want has some obligations as to what I do and how it affects others. Let me give you an example. Let's suppose let's use a real example. Down in Texas, there was a family and a neighbor, and the neighbor used to like to shoot off his rifle, automatic rifle, late into the evening for fun. Now, I suppose some of you can identify with shooting for fun, but the neighbor asked him to please not do it after 11 o'clock at night because they couldn't get the baby to sleep. Now, some of those guns make a lot of noise. And I don't think the neighbor was wrong to ask that. The guy, at least according to what I've read, he had the freedom to shoot off his gun. Nobody's contesting that. But he used that freedom in such a way that it impacted on his neighbors, in this case, the little baby. So they asked him to stop. The sad part is, he did stop, but not until after he killed, I think it was 5 people, the neighbors. He used his freedom to satisfy his sinful nature, which said, I can do what I want when I want, and nobody can tell me otherwise. Well, of course, now courts are going to tell him otherwise, but that's another story. So we don't use our freedom for things that harm people. Those 2 or 3 students, I think in Colorado, wanted to throw rocks at passing cars. Well, it seems kind of dumb to me, but maybe as teenagers we've all done some dumb things. But one of them hit a car and killed the driver. Now, I don't know whether they thought about that ahead of time or not, but they used their freedom to bring harm to someone else. And that's what it says you can't do. Use your freedom, but not to exercise something in you that hurts somebody else, because it says, and I'll just read it again, use your freedom to serve one another in love. For the whole commandment can be summed up in this one command: love your neighbor as yourself. The goal in life is not to be bogged down with rules. It's not to have no rules so I can do whatever I want. It's to find ways so that my life can help another one, to love them as I would like to be loved. See, it's really pretty simple. It's not really complicated. All you have to do is think about somebody else as you live your life. Think about others. And that will almost automatically give you keys as to what to do. So I want to invite you to think about that today as you live your life. Now, I don't have any specific things to say, do this, don't do that. That's rule making. That's not freedom anymore. And, frankly, I don't want someone telling me what I have to do. So why would I think I could tell them what to do, even if they do something very different? But if our guiding principle is to love one another just as we love ourselves, then I don't have to tell them what to do, and they don't have to tell me what to do. We're both going to want to do the same thing. Whatever is caring and compassion for others. That's how it works. That's the essence of what it means to love God and walk humbly in his presence. You think about it. Try it today and tomorrow and the next day. Weekend's coming up soon. Try it all the weekend. See what happens. Thanks for listening. I wish you a great day tomorrow and today. And if you have a need or a concern, let us know. We'll do whatever we can as fast as we can to help meet your need. Thanks so much for listening. God bless you. I'll be back tomorrow.